This episode of the Leap Forward podcast is brought to you by Bridge LT, leaders in conversational learning and innovation. Through AI role plays, technical simulators, and comprehensive training programs, Bridge LT is revolutionizing the future of corporate and enterprise education.
Today on Leap Forward, we sit down with Ian Plummer, the Commercial Director of AutoTrader, to explore how digital transformation is revolutionizing the way we buy and sell cars. Ian shares how AutoTrader uses data, AI, and machine learning to reshape the automotive market, giving us a glimpse into the future of the industry. We'll also discuss the challenges around electric vehicle affordability, the evolution of omnichannel car buying, and how sustainability is becoming a central focus in the automotive world. If you're keen to stay ahead of the curve in the world of car sales and technology, this episode is chock full of valuable insights. Here it is. I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by Ian Plummer, who is the Commercial Director of AutoTrader. Ian, welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be with you.
Really been looking forward to this conversation very, very much. So you're responsible for growing AutoTrader's new car business. You've been operating inside automotive for probably longer than you're prepared to admit, for a whole variety of different kind of brands. I'd love you to, first of all, just kind of paint a bit of a picture kind of your career journey today, and then we can start to kind of dig into some of the nuggets.
Sure. Like you say, I've been in automotive for a little while. I started outside of automotive in FMCG marketing over in France. I've studied, amongst other things, languages, and went to start my career in France. Ended up, though, quite quickly in automotive, working at Renault's head office. And what's quite unusual in my career is I've worked at sort of both ends of the spectrum in a quite vast automotive ecosystem. So at the one end, the automotive sort of powerhouse of the OEM head office doing international stuff. I did marketing, e-business, after sales and so on for Renault Nissan head office in Paris, around the world. And at the other end, I ran a single site retailer. In between, I've run a group retailer, one of the top 5 retailers in the UK at the time. And I've been a director of the national sales companies of the brands in a given market, in this case, the UK, for both Renault and for Volkswagen Group. So I got a good taste of the different parts of the automotive ecosystem. I like to think that, quite unusually, I therefore understand the different points of view, given that most people in automotive either work on one side of that equation or the other. And don't necessarily understand each other well enough. I think that's a relatively unusual and quite useful trait.
And of course, that then begs the question, how did you move into kind of the more publishing kind of side of the world in AutoTrader?
Well, I call it more tech than publishing.
Absolutely.
But
I'm going back a few years there.
A while and before my time. But in all of the jobs I had, I was e-business director of Renault head office when we were just starting. .com sort of bubbles were growing before they burst and so on in the very late 90s and the beginning of the noughties. Then through to running a single site retailer over in the heart of London, not far from where we are right now, actually. And in any of those cases, all the way through to running the network operations and sales operations of Volkswagen Group, it felt to me that the whole of the way we work is so digitally entwined, and projects can't get done. There aren't any projects really without a digital component. So digital was the driver of change. Digital was the driver of progress. Data underpins all of that. And that when I felt it was the time to move on from Volkswagen Group, there were only probably 2 places I felt that I would be interested in going. One was potentially Google, and I spoke with some very smart, nice people at Google and nearly went that way. But the other option I was most keen on was AutoTrader. Met with the CEO of AutoTrader and took things from there. And very luckily for me, landed in AutoTrader from Volkswagen Group, and was able to therefore continue more fully on the digital path that like I was saying, was a sort of red line across all of my experiences for 20 years or so prior, and increasingly so. And that therefore it felt to me was the thing I should focus on principally, if not solely.
And as you said, very much a digital and tech business. In fact, the UK's largest digital automotive marketplace. Can you kind of help us understand what that really means in terms of scale and size and breadth and depth?
Sure. I mean, in terms of scale, there's various headline numbers I could throw out at you if I can. So first of all, in terms of visits, around 11 million visits. Big pardon. I'll start again. 11 million visitors, and more like 85 million visits in a given month. If the 11 million visitors is compared to the amount of people who have a driving license in the UK, it equates to around 23%. So not far from 1 in 4 people who have a driving license, and some of those don't actually even drive, might be older, just don't have a car. They're coming to Auto Trader every month. And they're coming repeatedly. That's the 85 million visits they're doing each month. Spending a lot of time, to the degree that they're spending 40 times or so more time on our site than the sum of all the OEM websites put together. Similarly, sort of similar multiples compared to the sum of all the retailer websites put together. So we influence probably 3 and 4 of sales of cars in the UK. And see, compared to Google as well, around 5 times more searches for cars than Google do in the UK. So we're clearly not bigger than Google, of course, in generic terms, in this country, let alone more widely. We just operate in the UK. But in automotive, in the UK, I think we are, in the consumer's eyes, the place to go when you're looking for a vehicle of any sort. It could be a car, new or used. It could be a van. It could be a truck. It could be a bike, motorbike, e-bike, motorhome, caravan, just about anything that has a wheel. I think consumers generally think of us as almost like the Hoover of cars. It's the place you go to. It's the generic name almost. So very lucky position and privileged one that we cherish and work hard to maintain.
And that sort of maintain and grow and innovate sort of piece. Tell us a little bit about sort of Auto Trader and your strategy. How are you thinking about sort of where next and what next?
Well, Auto Trader as a history, if you like, goes back, as you know, 47 years. Started out as a magazine, was brought into the UK by a businessman named John Majeski, who brought the idea over from the US, and it was essentially a place where you published individual adverts for cars, and progressively you had things like photographs for cars. It was new at one point, it feels obvious today, but and the company evolved and moved away from digital, from press into digital a long time ago now. 2013 we ended any press operations. So we've moved away from being obviously a magazine a long time ago, but we're a marketplace way back since the beginning of the internet era. Had a website before Google and a couple of years before them, and about 8 years before Meta. So we're well attuned to the internet era. And became a digital marketplace of that scale that I mentioned a moment ago, sort of 500,000 cars. Generally, 85% or so of all the retailers in the UK work with us, just about all the brands and so on. But if the marketplace is at the core of Auto Trader, and you bear in mind that marketplace is focused on trying to enable the consumer to find the car that's suitable for them as easily and as enjoyably as possible, benefiting from all the right choices and options to choose from different brands, different products and so on as possible, then it's also intended to enable the seller to sell as quickly and as smartly and as efficiently and as profitably as possible. That's the heart of our business. It has been for a while, and it's evolved, as I said, over time, but it still is. Around that sort of core of our business, we've got another layer which we'd call our digital platform, which basically is focused on using all the data sets that power Auto Trader to enable our customers and our partners to use that data on their own websites and in their own businesses. So we share that data either via our own portal, which smaller retailers might use, via APIs, which larger retailers would embed in their business, or via around 100 tech partners, which take our data and provide it via their solutions. It could be website providers to retailers, or it could be DMS providers into retailers and brands and so on. So that data that enables a consumer to, for example, use our taxonomy to find a car more efficiently and hopefully pleasurably, can power the website experience on, let's say, BMW's website or Stellantis websites. And the valuations metrics can do the same on a retailer website. So they can power the back office decision making about how to price the vehicle, where to even position the vehicle geographically, and so on. So the data solutions is a big driver of the sort of next sort of phase of our strategy, which we've been working on for the last few years now. The third sort of circle we put around that second core would be our digital retailing strategy, which again needs to build on the platform approach, because the platform allows us, amongst other things, to create a more consistent level of engagement across the different platforms that a consumer may use. To give you an example, if a consumer is looking at a car on, let's say, Looker's website, they could also be looking at that same vehicle on Auto Trader's website, and they could be turning up at that retailer physically. They could be looking at that retailer's cars on the, let's say, Volkswagen brand website that Looker's work with. We need all of those sites ideally to be connected together so that if a consumer has reserved a vehicle, it shows it's reserved in every one of those locations. If it's bought, it comes off those different locations. The price changes. That automation of price change can be done automatically, and avoiding lots of human intervention that's costly and time consuming and often leads to errors and incorrect data that the consumer won't like. So if you build that level of consistency from your digital platform, that's a good enabler of doing digital retailing, because nobody's going to engage in the omni-channel kind of experience that we believe in unless they trust what they're looking at. You need to have trust and transparency in the whole process, the quality of the car advertising, the quality of the retailer's sort of proposition. All of that needs to instill trust in the buyer if the whole thing's going to work well. So our digital retailing strategy is focusing on enabling any retailer, large or small, to provide more opportunities for a consumer to do what they basically want these days when buying a car, which is to do more of the jobs to be done, more digitally, more often, but in the order they want to do them, where and when they want to do them, with a feeling of control and transparency and so on that they seek, but with the vital added ingredient of almost certainly wanting and enjoying the physical engagement with the retailer. It may be that they engage over phone call, chat, etc. at some point, but they're very likely to want to physically see the vehicle, speak to a retailer, get advice and so on. So it's that omni-channel combination, enabling all those different platforms to work smartly and to connect with the physical enjoyable part of retailing that car buying is still fully about, which we're focused on delivering for all of our customers.
It's a phenomenal description and overview of the kind of the complex ecosystem that kind of exists in the market. We talk about data. Well, what actually are we talking about there in terms of practical terms? But I think let's start with the market itself in terms of where is the market today. We've talked a lot about sort of EV. We've talked about cost of living and so on and so forth. And there's all of these different dynamics going on. It'd be really just to kind of get a sense of kind of what you see as Auto Trader in terms of the market.
Sure. I mean, the market context generally is relatively healthy. Mm-hmm. It's not euphorically buoyant, but it's robust, let's say. Right now, it's healthier in used cars than it is in new car retail, and new retail EV is probably if you did an amber rank, sort of an amber through to red, red, amber, green sort of coding and things, you'd probably put new EV retail in the red category, but probably used retail in the green, which does show there's a bit of a mismatch down probably to affordability issues. New EVs being, to put it bluntly, too unaffordable for too many people as you go into the mass market now. That's an equation which I think the manufacturers are going to have to square, and one which the added competition of new entrants coming to the market, particularly, but not only from China, will hopefully accelerate, and to the benefit of the consumer out there that wants to buy EVs, but sometimes can't, beyond the sort of early adopters, can't afford to do the right thing that makes them feel good. We all want to feel good, but we need often to buy a car for rational reasons rather than for the emotional one of feeling like you're doing the right thing. With that aside, on used retail sales, the numbers are positive this year. They were positive last year. The market's been strong ever since we exited the first lockdown. Demand has been very high. People generally see more need for a car these days than they ever did. Younger folks, we often sort of hear in the media, they don't want to drive a car. They do. More of them want to than ever. So actually demand has been really strong. Because supply has been constrained, notably because new cars were hard to build through 2020, 21, 22, because of, first of all, lockdowns, then supply chain issues of semiconductors, then even supply chain issues related to Ukraine. If you don't have enough incoming supply and demand is very strong, what happens is prices go up. So prices went up considerably for used cars through until last autumn. They dipped then, and they've sort of stabilized again now. But what this all means is that the retailers are selling the cars they have quicker than ever. Speed of sale is a vital ingredient to their efficiency. It's a vital component of the data sets that we provide them to enable them to fine-tune how they go to market and how they optimize everything they do on a daily basis. So essentially, since retailers, including obviously independents, of course, who only sell used cars, but also franchise retailers who sell new and used, since used cars is more fundamentally important for their overall profitability and that they're doing well, that's a good sign for the health of the business. Where there is tension now is in the new car world, where through those supply chain affected years of 2020, 21, 22, etc. in particular, where we were in a market that was probably a seller's market. Whatever you had, you'd sell, and you'd sell it very well in terms of pricing. Hardly any need for discounting. You'd have a long order bank. Consumers would face long lead times and so on. We've switched since summer 23 into a buyer's market on new cars because there is now more available supply. Discounting is increasing, and availability of cars is now better, and you don't have to wait for 9-12 months in lead time. So there's a bit of a switch in market dynamics going on there. And it's that area of new car, particularly as we switch to EV, that provides pressure for the OEMs and the retailers behind them, because they will need to sort of prime the pump, if you like, to generate more demand to square that challenge of hitting the zero emissions mandate challenge which the government has set. They will need to entice more people into the market, to be blunt. And for that, there will need to be a price lever. Hopefully for them, there'll also be a cost of production lever, which will enable them to actually reduce prices without just reducing margins. That I'm relatively optimistic on, because I think the price of lithium and the price of batteries overall, the key ingredient in the value of a car, an electric car, I should say, sort of 40 or so percent, often more of the value of a car, that needs to be lower if you're going to reduce the value of the whole thing. And luckily that is coming down, and we're seeing values of batteries below the $100 per kilowatt hour level, which everyone expected would be the point at which we'd see price parity on EVs compared to ICE. They're not at that point now. They're about 30% more expensive. They're heading in the right direction. But on used EVs, I should say there, when sometimes we hear that there's no interest in EVs, well, that's not true. When the price is right, people are buying them. In used EV terms, they are at price parity to ICE already, and they're turning very well. They're usually the fastest turning fuel type of product we see on our platform. So broad brush of the market, there's some good and some not so good, but generally speaking, it's amber to green.
And to the data point, give me some practical sort of use cases of how you're kind of, really sort of helping deal with some of those challenges and opportunities.
Well, data-wise, we are very fortunate to sit on a lot of valuable data. We share our data very widely, as I've mentioned, with retailers, OEMs, funders, insurers, directly through third-party tech partners and so on as well, who build solutions using our data to sell on with their own solutions to end customers as well. We share it equally to inform policy making through to governments and departments, for example, focusing particularly on EVs through OZEV and Treasury, DFT, etc. We share it with government bodies thinking of how they can inform policy making on various other aspects of the car market, particularly sort of representing the voice of the consumer. And so I think it's fair to say that we have that voice and that the inside of what the consumer's actually clicking on, not just what they're saying, but what they're doing. And we share it with the ONS, for example, as well, to inform inflation metrics. So we share it very widely. Where it's most valuable is when it's used in decision making or automation, even by some of our customers. So that could range from an insurer using our data to work out that, let's say your car's just been unfortunately damaged and written off. Well, it's very easy to give you the exact value of the replacement vehicle you need to buy. If you were to buy exactly the same model, derivative, etc., right now today with the same mileage, you need this amount of money to go and do that, and you can find one on Australia almost certainly. So that's a very easy equation for them. But more broadly and in more in greater volume of impact, our retailer partners use our data to work out what to buy, how to sell it, what price to sell it, where to sell it. And the data metrics are integrated in a suite of solutions we call AT Connect, which are available either, as I've mentioned, via our portal solutions for the smaller retailers, or sometimes through APIs and so on into bigger players. And for example, you'll be able to work out, as I said, that a given car could be worth selling in a particular region because there's greater demand and lower supply of that particular car. So it'll turn faster. Speed of sale, as I mentioned, is a key metric. You may well get a higher price for it too. And if you're a larger group, knowing where to put the car and how to price it is vital. The pricing metrics are super important. And if you do automate, as some of our larger customers do now, you take away the risk that the industry veterans who've got huge and massively valuable knowledge use their intuition over data. And our message to our partners would always be use the data first and foremost. You may catch one or two problems with intuition, but if you go looking for them all the time, you'll spend an awful long time and probably make too many mistakes if you try to, spending too much, putting too much focus on the intuition side of that debate. So if you're automating, you're almost certainly going to get a better return, sell cars quicker, save yourself a lot of time, and be able, in terms of the sort of dynamics in retail, how we would focus data is automating the things that can be done simpler, better, but allowing a retailer to focus on the things where it's a people business, as we always say, where consumers want advice, they want the wow moment of seeing the car, driving the car, and so on, and they want great explanations of how the car actually works. So focus on those more human aspects of the business and automate and use the data where most appropriate to enable you to do more of the human value add, let's say.
And you've talked a bit about automation there. Obviously, you have a huge data set, and the obvious question I have to ask you is how you're thinking about sort of training that sort of AI kind of side to the business to further kind of implement your strategy.
Well, we've been using AI for many years. It's been talked about a lot, and you know it better than I do as a domain, but we've been using all the principles of AI for many years, machine learning, etc. But we have a team of around 400 data scientists and engineers that represent around a third of our overall workforce. So we focused a lot on data and built that team up particularly over the last 10 years or so, the data science side of things. We release around 1,500 software releases every week. So we've got a team of people who are very focused on using the data to inform how we improve our own proposition and provide that data to our partners in the smartest way possible. So data is very much at the core of everything we do, and informs, hopefully, both smart decisions that we can make as well as ones made by our customers. So I mentioned valuations. Valuations metrics are basically learning all the time from around 900,000 daily data points on the vehicles that are in the UK park. But even the vehicle park itself, our taxonomy, is the reflection of our 47 years of experience of fine-tuning everything that's in the market, working with our partners, OEMs, for example, as well, on the new cars coming into the market, to fine-tune the visibility by derivative and specification to that level of detail, I should say, so that you really can understand what the car is and therefore where it should sell best and what it should be valued at and so on. So any data expert or any business based themselves on data, as well as the hype around AI, will always recognize that it's first and foremost about the quality of the data you've got. We're very lucky that we've focused on data for many years and used the machine learning and AI principles to provide already a lot of tools to our partners. And we know that we can carry on doing a lot more of that. We can make our search experience even better, I'm sure, using AI tools, and we are already doing all of that. We can make equally the intelligent advertising solutions to a retailer smarter. We could probably get to the point of telling a retailer which of their cars they should advertise and which maybe they wouldn't want to advertise, as well as which price to do so. Intelligent pricing I've touched on obviously already, but I think the advert itself potentially could be populated more automatically. If you've got the core data, which we do, we can probably enable our retailers to save time in some of the more let's say dull parts of getting the advert quality right that they have to spend a lot of time on, so that like my other example about the combination of omnichannel, or the combination of data and intuition and data, so that retailers can focus their time on the merchandising quality of their digital ads. AI will probably tell us which is the best order to put the photographs in on the advert, rather than leaving that to the retailer. And again, it's time that they can save to spend either on improving the actual quality of those images, if they're going to take them themselves, or on the quality of the human interaction with the customer. So we think there's quite a lot to be done already, a lot we have done, but a lot more ahead of us in this space, in order to continue to improve that car buying experience and improve the car selling opportunity for our partners.
I mean, it certainly feels like sort of Auto Trader is kind of very much kind of the boardroom table of the retailers, the OEMs, and you mentioned earlier new entrants. I'd be really interested in understanding, how do you work with manufacturers and retailers to bring new kind of product to market?
Great question. First of all, we can tell a manufacturer what the likely future values of their cars are going to be based on data. We like to think that all our valuations data can be described very fairly compared to anything else that's out in the market as exactly this, based on data and not on opinion. But we can tell a manufacturer that based on where we can see a car sitting in the market, it would likely perform in a certain way. As the car comes into market and then starts actually being compared to certain competitor sets in the real world by consumers that won't necessarily be industry standard segments and so on, we can fine-tune that judgment. But Autotrader with such a large audience, has a great opportunity to help a manufacturer generate initial awareness, either of a brand new brand. You mentioned new entrants, someone like a BYD grew massively on our platform during the Euros because people went on TV, saw BYD around the stadium, and then did what they usually do with what we call a Top Gear effect. You see something on the TV and then you think, what's that? You go onto Autotrader. We have more searches, as I said, than Google do in automotive terms. And then we saw a big spike, initially around 70% increase of ad views for their products, for BYD's new cars on our platform when the Euros kicked off. So the brand awareness piece is vital. If you take that to a model awareness point, it's very similar. So we can show the given new model. Let's say Volkswagen launch a new car. We can position that vehicle against its real world competitor set product and show it in a native ad format within search experience. So you could be looking at, let's say, a Toyota, but we know that the given Toyota searcher is likely to be a very relevant intender for that same Volkswagen. So we show you a position, say, highlighting that particular Volkswagen, taking you perhaps to a brand store, sort of a home within home for on Autotrader's sort of real estate for the brand. Give more explanations about that particular, could be brand, BYD model for Volkswagen ID.5 or whatever it might be. Which usually enables you to get a lot of the right messages across, reassurance as well as awareness and so on, and then flow into a stock opportunity to actually find one of those vehicles, new or used. So it's a sort of see, shop, buy, easy flow that keeps the consumer on the platform and enables you to go from maybe being disrupted, not knowing about something, learning about it, understanding it a bit more, all the way through to actually, well, this is a good car. I didn't realize this was going to be in my basket, but it is, and now I want to buy one. So it makes things simpler for the consumer. So that's a great way to get awareness for a brand and generate real-world sales inquiries. And we know that we influence a large proportion of new car sales now with our OEM partners, data that they share with us, or retailers sharing back what they've actually sold to.
And talking about that sort of sales and buy kind of side of things, so from a consumer perspective, you just painted a really interesting kind of journey there. Is the consumer driving that journey, or is the technology driving the journey, or is the industry driving the journey? Like, there's a lot of talk about sort of, this idea of full-blown, online retailing, never getting to a showroom. What are you seeing? What's your view on kind of that customer journey?
Well, as I mentioned before, I think the consumer in all our research shows quite clearly that they want to do most of their car buying jobs. I mean, there are many, there are 30 odd. They want to do most of them digitally most of the time, but not everybody does. And some people want to do certain of those steps 100% digitally and others 100% physically, or some sort of combination. And it's enabling a multifaceted, multi-step journey to be done in the way that the consumer wants to do it, rather than the way that the industry has always preconceived the right steps. I mean, in the industry, we've historically had sort of sales processes where we've had things written up on walls and trained through sales teams to say there's the 10 steps to success or whatever it might be. And the first step would be qualifying, and then you go through test driving and so on, asking for the business. If you turn up at a retailer today, the last thing you want to do is be qualified, because the chances are you know exactly what you want. Now, often in our research, we can see that sort of 7 in 10 people are walk-ins, not in the sense of what retailers historically would have considered a walk-in, which is a tire kicker wasting time, but they're walk-ins. They know what they want. They've looked at online.
Right.
They've seen the car that they've online that they've come to actually now drive. And if you start sitting them down and qualifying them in the old sense, saying, "Tell me, what would you like to buy today? Tell me a bit more about yourself." When you're thinking, "Well, I've already maybe filled in one of your forms, or if I haven't, but I know what I want. I just want to drive the car." So enabling that connection to work in this omni-channel sort of joined up, blended version of connecting digital to physical is what consumers are telling us they really do value. And given the high value, so at the same point of the car itself, very few people want to go straight to purely buy online. That does remain valuable for some people, particularly in our leasing journey. We know that consumers who use a lease product are often more experienced to change cars frequently, more comfortable with that sort of online buying journey. But even they will almost certainly have some level of sort of offline assistance to finalize the process and so on. But if, for example, you take a couple of the the steps of buying a car that are considered particularly cumbersome by a consumer: part exchange or finance. Part exchange is rarely something that people enjoy, because at some point a sales executive will trot out of the showroom you're in, go and look at your car, and come back in and do some sort of calculations, and the sales manager will tell you what it's worth. You probably won't like what you hear. So it's not the best part of the experience, and you don't necessarily always trust how you've got to that point. Auto Trader is lucky to be the most trusted brand in automotive. We can provide that experience to a consumer, to let them value their car on our platform before they turn up at the retailer. They can put that valuation of a vehicle into what we call our deal builder journey. So they found the car they want. They can then put the car value that they have to put against the deal, put that into the equation, see what they still need to finance. Then my second point on finance, typically, I don't know whether you like sitting in a room with a business manager and explaining your personal finances. Very few people do, but you're used to doing your mortgage and your insurance and so on online. So why not do car finance online? So to continue building your deal, if you can do a soft check and run the numbers, change your term, change your deposit that you want to throw at the deal and so on to get to a certain monthly payment, that's fine. But if you can go even further, it's better. You can do a full online application and get actually approved. That's great. Then that puts the deal into the retailer system, into the finance partner that retailer has chosen to work with system, and confirming everything back to the consumer. So that all I now need to do as a consumer is turn up, check the car. I do want to see it before I actually take ownership of it and confirm the final signing of the deal and so on. But if I like what I see, if it's conformed to what I saw in the advert, then I go through with what I mentioned, a joined up, digitally enabled, but also physically completed, more enjoyable car journey, which is good again for the consumer, good for the retailer, because they've got the consumer to do a bunch of jobs that they haven't had to spend time on themselves, and they've got a consumer turning up to their retailer that's more committed to the car, likely to pay for the car by the price that's advertised, not feel like they need to sort of haggle because they feel already pre-committed to it. So it's kind of good all round. You've got a virtuous cycle there, good for the consumer and good for the retailer.
And talking about that virtuous cycle, what role does Auto Trader play beyond the sale?
We have a lot of finance solutions in play now, and are looking to work with our finance partners to enable more of an ongoing journey in that regard. We don't get involved in after sales. We do have data around things like MOT dates and service dates, particularly when consumers add that data into their garage section of their personal data on Auto Trader, and that could be useful for them. It's not a huge area of value for the consumer just now. We haven't focused on that as a major priority up to now, and there's no doubt more opportunity to do more in that area to provide, again, value to the consumer and more value back to the partners that work with us.
Yeah, well, you're certainly doing a lot already. And to that point, 400 data scientists, 1,500 releases. You're moving fast as an organization. The industry itself is moving fast. That change, that dynamic that you have to have, the culture that you need to sort of underpin. Tell me a little bit about sort of your kind of philosophy as Auto Trader. How do you kind of think about culture and professional development?
That's a great point. We could spend the whole podcast talking about that.
Hopefully get you back to do that.
Well, maybe. But first of all, we define our purpose as driving change together responsibly, which is important to unpack slightly. So driving change is something we think is fundamentally useful and valuable for the industry for many of the reasons we've talked about. There are many opportunities to make the car buying journey more enjoyable, better, smarter for the consumer. And if you do that, it's likely to be more valuable for the people selling. If the consumer is going to probably transact more often, there are 34 or so million cars in our car park. They transact roughly every 3.5 years. If they can transact just a little bit quicker, that's going to increase the value of the market. If they can transact with more added services, finance, insurance, and so on, then that's going to increase the value of the market. So there's a very win-win kind of journey there. Driving change, I mentioned my focus on digital when I was before Auto Trader and so on. It just feels like car buying, car selling can still be improved massively from where we are to the benefit of the industry. And we only work, the other point in that unpacking of the driving change together that's really important is that together we only work well when we work together with partners. We are clearly not a producer or a seller of cars. What we can do is help those who do produce and or sell cars to do just that, smarter, better, more efficiently, hopefully more profitably. So we always work in partnership with retailers, brands, finance houses, and so on to achieve our aims, but hopefully in a way that achieves theirs. We have a culture with our field teams, whether they're working with OEMs or retailers, any of our partners, where no one is paid a bonus or a commission. No one is pushed to achieve a number at the expense of what's right for the customer. We would always focus on what's sustainably good for any of our customers that they need to find value from. And our teams will be recognized on how well they deliver sustainable long-term value for their customers. Since virtually everybody works with AutoTrader, we would destroy our business if we were to sell something incorrectly or over push the wrong product into a given customer. They would leave and not want to work with us in future, which would be bad for them, I think, but definitely bad for us. And the last point of that unpacking is responsibly. So we believe very firmly in various aspects of that key word, which involve the inclusivity of the people who work with us, the equality we apply to how we work. We work as one AutoTrader. There's no sort of individual privileges or whatever for certain people. No one has a desk or let alone an office. Everybody is treated very much the same way. But we have guilds and networks that reflect all of the different strands of society that we work in. And we like to think that we're a very diverse workforce, but one which we know can get ever more diverse and ever more inclusive. We work very hard in that direction. We do equally a lot of lobbying of government in strands of work, including things like ethnicity, pay gap reporting, to not just push us on. We do that reporting, and we could be better in that regard for sure. We should be, but we think everybody in the PLC world should be reporting that in the same way that we report on gender pay gaps. So we like to think we keep pushing the envelope in many of those regards. But in another key aspect of responsibility, we also focus on sustainability. So we were the first FTSE 100 to be carbon literate. We are almost every one of our team has gone through what we call carbon literacy training. We've adapted that toolkit and paid for that and supported that for the automotive sector. We're now doing that for the tech sector as well. So we're trying to use our influence not just to do like a good thing in AutoTrader and say, yeah, great, we're doing our bit for net zero and everyone's very literate on how to reduce carbon. And then designers, by the way, get really into things like, well, how can I improve things? I need to build a dark mode for the app, or I need to change the way we scroll the pages, all the sort of simple things that can reduce energy consumption. So we can do a lot of stuff ourselves, but we can influence the many, many partners that we work with. I mentioned 14,000 retailers, all of OEMs and so on. So we've shared carbon literacy with them, but we have a huge amount of tech partners we work with across the industry, whether they work with us directly or they're just other members of the tech environment. So we'll share the tech playbook, if you like, now on carbon literacy with that wider environment and hopefully help influence change more broadly. So it's very much a culture based on always aiming to do what feels like the right thing. Easier said than done, but it should always feel like we're doing the right thing for the right reasons. And almost certainly that will end up delivering the right result.
Thank you. I've got one last question for you, which is, if you were starting out in this industry, what would your advice be?
I'd probably do maths A level, and I didn't do maths A level because I hugely recognize the value of data. I'm not a data scientist, but I'd have done maths A level and probably carried on to do it at university because the value of data that we see is colossal. I think I'm pretty good at making good use of the data, but I'm not the data scientist manipulator of the data and that I would like to have been. And if I'd start again now, that's definitely where I'd focus.
Ian, thank you so much for joining me today.
Pleasure. Thank you.